Hi guys, Kai Yong here. Just a quick update on this week market analysis. Right. First thing I would like to point out is actually on the dollar index. Right. What you can see on this chart over here. Okay, this is on the daily. This structure, this pattern, right, it's signifying that we are going to see a potential drop in the future. Right. And if the dollar index were to signal a potential fall, okay, and this move can be drastic, all right? It can be somewhere around 98.3 to somewhere around 98.8, with a drop potentially at least towards 93.82, right, or even lower. Now that drop in the dollar index means that all your major pairs would have a huge potential for you to capitalize on. All right, so this is something that you want to pay very close attention to. Especially at the start of May next week, as well as perhaps the following week, because when that drop, okay, when dollar index starts to fall, it can be significant. All right, so that's something I want to highlight right at the start of this update. Now, moving on to some of the currencies that I'm watching. Right, naturally, if we are expecting the dollar index to drop, then euro dollar we are expecting it to push higher. All right, now this, you can see it's really in a very tight range. It's not moving a lot since the start of this year. Right, it's moving lower, but it's losing its momentum, which means that again, this is a pattern that signifies a potential reversal. This reversal can be ready to go, all right, but if you look at the daily momentum, it's still potentially signaling that it can still drop lower, perhaps towards the area of 1.1070, and from there, a potential push towards 1.18, it's very possible. Okay, so look to monitor this. Don't miss this move to the upside on the euro dollar. Okay, pound dollar. Let's go to the lower time frame. Actually, the 4-hour is much clearer. Okay, I've been mentioning that the long term is due to the downside, but short term wise, we might still be able to capitalize on this move up, because if now, okay, we are at the bottom of the structure. Okay, so if you look to with a very conservative stop of, let's say, just about 50 pips or so, okay, somewhere lower, you can see that even to this move up here, the risk to reward is somewhere about 1:7, or even sometimes if you can get in at a much tighter stop, you can even get a better risk to reward. Okay, so this is something that you might want to pay close attention to also, simply because we are now at the bottom of the structure, right? So any potential reversal sign, you can actually ride onto this trade. Okay, the other one is Aussie dollar. All right, start of the week we share about a potential move lower. Okay, it has moved down, and now if I bring you to the 4-hour, it has tapped the previous bottom. Okay, which means that we might see a potential not reversal, a retracement, followed by perhaps another move lower towards this lower trend line, this structure pattern. Okay, but if you look at this overall, okay, on the bigger scale, the long-term bias is still to the upside, all right, which again confluences with the dollar weakening, right? Because if the dollar index were to drop, then your major pairs, especially the euro dollar, the Aussie dollar, likely will see some strength into it. Okay, Kiwi dollar actually very similar. You can see that right now price is at the previous low, so I'm expecting some form of at least a retracement higher, okay, before it, let's say, wants to continue lower. In terms of the Aussie and the New Zealand, I believe that the Aussie dollar would give you a much clearer structure for you to actually capitalize on. Now, dollar Canadian, all right, we anticipated that move to move higher, and then from this top structure, it's where you want to look for that move down. Okay, now this entire move here is very corrective. Okay, this whole piece is very corrective. In other words, the higher probability is due to the downside. This whole piece is actually just a middle portion for this correction impulse. Okay, so you might get another push higher, maybe next week or so, you might get price hitting the top of this to have a very high risk to reward trade for you to capitalize on towards the downside, targeting a minimum of 1.3068. Dollar Swiss franc, sorry, this is a list you to dollar yen. Right now, dollar yen, since the start of the week, nothing much has moved. We talk about this top here, all right, double top, potential retracement or even a potential reversal towards this structure, and if it breaks, it can go all the way down towards 107.5. All right, something you want to also pay close attention to. Euro yen, we talk about that move down at the start of the week. All right, we talk about this correction pattern. It has moved down. This is pretty corrective, but because the overall structure is due to the downside, right, as long as price remains within this trend line, we continue to expect it to fall towards 123.66 area. Okay, so any correction towards this trend line like that, okay, you can look for that trade to the downside. Okay, this is something you can pay attention to as well. Euro pound, the bias never changed. Price just continued to move sideways. The whole pattern still signify a potential drop towards 8483. So nothing much to update over here. Euro Aussie, all right, we call for the upside. It has moved up, all right, but this retracement looks pretty deep. Okay, so what I would suggest is to be patient on this. Don't jump onto it, right? Because this correction might just do a bigger one like that. All right, and then that gives a much clearer pattern for us to trade to the upside. Okay, so just be patient on the Euro Aussie. Euro New Zealand, right? The bigger time frame structure. Okay, the bias is due to the upside, at least towards this top of 720. But on the lower time frame 1 hour, what I'm seeing is this whole thing is very corrective. Okay, so the upside might still go, but it might be very, very limited, forming something like this, right? And if this happened, then you would want to capitalize on that move down, potentially first target somewhere around the 1.6650, and of course it can even go lower to 1.6430. Right, so pay close attention to this as well. You might get this set up maybe early next week. Right, Pound Aussie, we have been talking about this. It has moved right between Euro Aussie and Pound Aussie. I think Pound Aussie might give you a much nicer corrective pattern. You can see this is not very deep. Okay, if you continue to move sideways like that, you get a correction, and that gives you a valid setup to look for the upside, right? Potentially towards 1.8734. Okay, and then from there, we all know the bigger structure is to the downside. Right, New Zealand Canadian. Okay, if you look at this structure, you can see it's actually very, very similar to the Pound Aussie that we talked about before that move to the upside. Right, so what I want to highlight is patterns tends to repeat itself in the market. Okay, so what you need to just do is to identify what pattern is doing, and then you'll be able to anticipate, 2 steps, 3 steps before it really happened. So this one here, New Zealand Canadian. Okay, so this structure, this pattern is telling us that the upside is more likely to happen. So you want to look for a buy setup potentially towards 0.9150. All right, that's a pretty decent trade that you want to consider as well, right? Even with, let's say, a risk of 50 pip. Okay, and your target up there, it gives you at least a risk reward of 1:5. All right, not too bad. Something that you want to consider. Right, and that's about it for my list. All right, I think I removed one of the currency out. All right, so this is the updated one. Okay, you can see on the left hand side. On the right hand side. All right, so that's all for this update. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to comment in this post, and I will actually answer your questions accordingly.